CBS presents this program in color.
Lucy in London.
This stands out as what the meaning of the word depicts. It was special. It was special for Lucy. It was special for all of us.
Starring Lucille Ball.
The special is special, and this special was different. It had music, it had locations, it had culture.
We didn't color inside the box for that, and she was willing and eager to go there.
This is the artist reaching out of the Lucy character and saying, I'm more than this.
It was a departure for her from what she had been doing for so many years.
It was shown once, appreciated or not, but then it wound up in a film vault for 45 years, and fans have been asking, why can't we see that one again?
I would certainly put her as an artist on top of my list of things I'm most proud of, having been able to say I directed Lucille Ball. I remember getting a telephone call from Lucy. She said, I have a vacation coming up of about 30 days, and I haven't figured out whether I want to just relax and have a vacation or work. And I wanted to talk to you about possibly producing and directing a television special.
Cleo, Lucy's cousin sister, said, you know, Lucy's talking about possibly doing something else because she's really wants to expand her horizons and do other things other than the I Love Lucy character.
Lucy got to a point where she gets frustrated occasionally. I want to do something different. I want to do something different. I want to do something. Okay.
Cleo said, I'm thinking about maybe doing some international type of programs with Lucy, like starting off in Paris. In fact, I'm thinking of doing a show in France. And so we decided to go off to Paris to see if we can put together a package in France. But we found one major problem, the language. The French people, particularly in Paris, were not that interested in speaking English. And we decided then and there that as beautiful as France is in Paris, that we can't do a production in France. So we all came home and said to Lucy, we're going to try England. And CBS agreed and gave us a budget of $500,000 to do this Lucy in London special.
I was, at the time, literally on my way to New York to direct a Jack Paar special, totally thinking this is never going to happen. Lo and behold, I got a telephone call from Lucy saying, I'm on my way to England, we're going to do it, and it's going to be Lucy in London.
Welcome to London.
Thank you.
Miss Carmichael?
Yes.
Royal Luxury Tours Limited, at your unlimited service.
The first thing I did when I got the green light from Lucy that we were actually going to make this special was to call Ron Friedman and Pat McCormick, because I knew instantly we needed a script and we needed it yesterday.
We were eager to do Lucy in London and had a great time writing it. We wrote the first draft. It was approved by all the powers that be, including the only power that mattered, which was Lucy, and we were really looking forward to going for the shoot.
Ron Friedman was a well-established sitcom writer and dramatic writer, and Pat McCormick I met when I was directing a NBC series called Hullabaloo.
For McCormick and for me as writers, London was great because the idea of juxtaposing the all-American Lucy of I Love Lucy in London, wow, fish out of water automatically.
We shall rush, but we shan't hurry. You see, you can hear the difference in the words. Hurry, 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 hurry. And then there's rush.
I was used to speed, and I didn't want to spend an hour in lighting and setups and so forth. And I knew this was a very limited shoot, and we wouldn't have time to bring the Desilu studio with a large entourage of technicians, equipment, etc. So I contacted Fuad Saeed, an American Egyptian.
Fuad Saeed was the cinematographer and production unit called Cinemobile Systems for a very successful series that we were doing at Desilu at the time.
His company was getting really well known for a very successful dramatic series that was kind of a breakthrough show called I Spy.
It had never been done before that this show, I Spy, was shot all over the world on actual location with a single VW SUV, which included all the camera, lighting, grip equipment.
This was basically a little van that had from soup to nuts all the technical equipment you would need to shoot a one-camera 35mm film.
And you could put it into the mouth of a guppy, one of the massive airplanes, and fly it anywhere in the world.
And this turned out to be the best gamble of all because we had so many limited days to shoot and so many scenes to shoot. We could never have done it in a traditional studio system.
Television specials up to that time were traditionally studio bound and involved equipment and electronic cameras that were very hard to take out into an outdoor situation. They had just started to begin to experiment with this with some of the more portable equipment, but there hadn't been really a special where they had done the entire thing on location featuring a major television character at that time.
There were those in the studio who, of course, didn't want us to do it. It sounded like disaster. I had never done a special abroad, neither had anybody else, but Lucy saw the script and she was ready to go and she didn't care what anybody said. You know, when she determines she's going to do something and wants to do something, let's go.
Okay, let's go.
Now you're talking.
Because we were going to London, we thought of certain London landmarks that we definitely wanted Lucy to visit. But things alter because of clearances and other peculiarities of the business. But mostly it was exciting to see Lucy in the exact locations that we had asked for.
I think it's very interesting to note that here we have who at that time was the most powerful woman in the entertainment business without question, the head of a major television production studio, and she's over in London riding around in a motorcycle car shooting a television special. That's an absolutely unique situation that I don't think ever happened before or since.
When we determined that we were going to film at the airport, we were told it's impossible. We cannot get permission to do this. So it would have blown out the entire scene. But we privately hired a retired Queen's Palace guard who had all the connections. And he said, all you need to do is fill up a valise with English pounds and I will get you anywhere you want to go.
It was very difficult to shoot at the Heathrow airport, although I'd heard some stories that you had to pay off people. Somebody may have paid off somebody, but I want to tell you, Cleo and I never paid anybody off in England. Everything we did through negotiation, through charm and talent. And we achieved whatever we needed at all these different locations. We had to pay for some places, but we were able to get all the location work we needed.
When we went through the airport, Pan American Airways had no mock-up and no planes available for us to use. So in order to film the sequence with Lucy debarking from the airplane with the scene at the top of the stairs, we literally convinced Pan Am to give us 2 hours of an active airplane that was flying off to some other country to stop, and we had to rush and get that scene shot within that period. There was no airplane in the hangar or grounded for the day.
Bye-bye. Hope to see you again sometime. Thank you.
We'd also made the determination creatively to let Bob Willoughby shoot this entire sequence. Bob Willoughby is one of America's treasures as one of the greatest still photographers in the world. Bob Willoughby was a front cover Life magazine photographer in the heyday of Life magazine. So I was very proud of that sequence, and it wasn't a case of where we decided to save a few bucks and shoot it with a still photography sequence, but I thought creatively it moved us quickly through the airport. And also, in hindsight now, thinking, wow, on that film shoot we had one of America's greatest still photographers actually doing it.
And how long do you intend to stay?
Oh, I'm only going to be in London for 1 day.
1 day?
Yes, I won this jingle contest.
Good grief.
When I first got to London, I had no idea the amount of work that was already done by the Desilu people. I thought we were going to be flying by the seat of our pants. We'd have to put the entire show together, etc. But fortunately, with a very qualified staff, led, I think, by Cleo, who is Lucy's cousin, and she was in charge of production with Bernie Weissman. They had done a lot of work.
We had a second unit, and we had doubles for Tony and for Lucy for all the long shots out through the beautiful countryside and all through. And every day was sunny and beautiful, and when we finished filming all of that, the English producer said, "How do you think you will ever match these scenes when the principals come? You know, it rains in England a lot." And I said, "Oh, well, just, you know, we'll have to trust that it will all work out." And sure enough, Tony and Lucy were scheduled for these particular days and did the same things and rode through the countryside and did all beautiful sunshine everywhere.
Lucy, my love, for the first stop on your tour, I give you the heart of London.
Lucy was a daredevil. When we were at the Thames, as an example, the script called for not having her go into the water.
She was not supposed to take the dive into the Thames because we were alerted to the fact that it was polluted. So she was not going to go in there. Of course not. She didn't have the shots, the tetanus, the everything else. She was going to go to a swimming pool in another location.
But Lucy on her own said, "That's not funny. I got to go into the water." And so she took Newley into the Thames, and that was, you know, it was great. I mean, I was thrilled that she did it. But on the other hand, I wouldn't have forced her to do it, knowing what the conditions were.
But she's out there, she's doing it, it's rolling. She goes right into the drink, right into the drink. That was Lucy. She went for it.
She was such a consummate actress that she didn't want to fake anything. She wanted to go for it, and I love that about her. The 2 times that we had her run across main thoroughfares with heavy traffic, in real time, "Lucy, you got to get from this corner to that corner. Go." And she took off.
Why?
Now that I think about it, that I'm much older and probably a lot wiser, I would have never risked her life like that. But she had no problem. She never ever said, "I'm not going to do it," or "We need to control this traffic." The other thing I did, which is now very historical, I contacted Phil Spector. And I called him and saying, "You're never going to believe this, Phil, but I'm doing a Lucille Ball special. How about writing the theme song to the special?" And Phil said, "Not only will I write it, I will sing it and arrange it." And he actually did the title song to Lucy in London.
Phil Spector was the busiest producer working in Hollywood at the time. He had several hits in the top 10, I believe, when this special aired. And he was quite in demand and known for being demanding.
Phil was very eccentric. Everybody in the music world acknowledged that he was literally, and I use the term very lightly, but a genius in terms of, you know, working with musicians and creating this famous wall of sound. And any of the movement in the show, when it came to music, was all choreographed by David Winters, who was a brilliant choreographer.
And you also had Irwin Kostal, who had just come off The Sound of Music and was also highly in demand and was known for complex musical arrangements featuring more than one song, which this special incorporates in a couple of the numbers, specifically the London Bridge number.
He was brilliant for his work on Mary Poppins, and he had the reputation of just being a giant in the movie industry in terms of scoring and so forth.
He added so much to the quality of the show.
Lucy brought Kostal in, and I brought somebody that I was involved with very early in my career, Billy Goldenberg. And the combination between Kostal and Goldenberg turned out to be brilliant.
Phil Spector's Lucy in London production number was originally supposed to be followed by 2 short sequences that were ultimately not included in the show. Miraculously, at least silent footage of these scenes have been discovered in the studio vaults. In the first scene, Lucy exits one of those mod clothing boutiques wearing her fancy new pantsuit, and she and Tony drive off to their next adventure. At this point, Lucy wanted Tony to take her to see The Changing of the Guard, and he said, "Oh, you don't want to do that. Everybody goes to see that. Believe me, it's nothing. And she goes, what do you mean it's nothing? It's a world famous thing. And he goes, well, let me show you what it really is. And he opens up a compartment on this motorcycle and pulls out a really tall hat like is worn by the guardsmen, and he puts it on, and he proceeds to demonstrate how the changing of the guard actually happens. But while the company was rehearsing and filming this scene, someone asked, hey, why don't we have Lucy and Tony witness the real thing? So even though they had already filmed Tony's one-man recreation, they ultimately included shots of the real changing of the guard in the actual show. After this, they went off to see Madame Tussauds Wax Museum.
Madame Tussauds Waxwork.
Oh, no! Oh, Tony! Madame Tussauds! Oh, you took me to see something on my list.
When we went to Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, because it was actively one of the biggest tourist attractions in London, we were told we couldn't bring in one piece of equipment until the last tourist left. So we ended up literally going without sleep for 2 straight days because we started to film that sequence when the museum basically closed to the public. And then we filmed the last scene and outside when Lucy runs out of the Chamber of Horrors. It's daylight outside, so we had filmed all the way through the night until the very next morning. And then we started our next day's shoot right on time. And there's a great story in the Wax Museum. James Robertson Justice, this wonderful actor, brings Lucy down to the Chamber of Horrors and shows her all the various torture instruments. Well, the prop department had made these breakable bottles. And so the minute she would hit them, they would splinter all over the place, and you couldn't even feel it if it hit you. For some reason, one of the bottles was not a fake. And Lucy picked up this soft drink bottle. Filming the scene, she goes behind Justice, and she gives him a great whack on the head, which sent him to the hospital with a bloody head and stitches. He was a good sport about it, but it was pretty terrifying at the time because she gave him a pretty good whack with that bottle.
When Lucy runs out of Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, in the original script, she and Tony discover that they are feeling a little peckish and would like to have some lunch. So he decides he'll take her to a typically British luncheon. And no, they don't go to a restaurant. He takes her to a fish and chip stand.
They were on a bicycle built for 2. And I think David Winters and myself even talked about maybe having them singing one of those old traditional folk songs. The reason we did that scene was because the gentleman that we cast behind the counter spoke with a very heavy Cockney accent. And it was cute because Lucy was trying to talk back to them with a Cockney accent. Because of time, we cut that out of the film.
Great Foster's? What's Great Foster's?
It's an old English country home of the Tudor period.
When we went to Great Foster's, this magnificent garden to shoot the Taming of the Shrew sequence, and it was quite a ways outside of London to Great Foster's. We got there, I think it was like 4:30 a.m. in the morning, and Lucy went into makeup first thing while we set up the cameras out in the garden, and she put on this magnificent Anne Boleyn costume. Well, these huge estates were under tremendous tax burdens, and the owners of these estates were forced to make certain rooms like a hotel. Lucy came out of makeup all by herself, sat down in this wonderful throne chair that was in the hallway, and was sitting there waiting for word from us that we were ready downstairs to film. And as she tells the story, this elderly gentleman having to go to the loo came out of his room, entered the hallway, and saw her sitting on her throne in this Anne Boleyn gown, and almost had a heart attack because he thought he was seeing a ghost of Anne Boleyn. And she thought it was one of the funniest things that ever happened.
Oh, hello there.
Hello.
And we got a British actor who did his Shakespearean bit in the garden, as I recall.
Peter Wyngarde was a young Shakespearean-type actor that Lucy was impressed by, and she had originally seen Peter do a show on Broadway with Vivien Leigh from Gone with the Wind. So when the opportunity came up, she wanted to work with him. He said in the 2.5 days they worked together, it was like 1.5 years of going to film school, that he learned so much. He was thrilled.
Lucy knew where cameras should be better than anybody. She knew if the lighting was right. She knew if the sound man heard a propeller in the background and says, we got to go again. She knew.
Well, Lucy, That's another fine mess you got yourself into. It looks as though I can't leave you alone for a minute.
Well, I didn't know that was the way they tame shrews. You could get killed playing Shakespeare.
Lucy and Tony just fled from the Taming of the Shrew experience, and they end up on the London Bridge. The statement that David Winters and I wanted to make was more about the London Bridge than it was about the guest star and Dave Clark 5. So they not only sang Pop Goes the Weasel, but they sang London Bridge is Falling Down.
The Dave Clark 5 was a very popular group of the time, doing songs that they were not associated with. And I'm sure that fans of Dave Clark 5 might have felt a sense of bewilderment that they weren't doing songs that they expected them to do.
It's not something that I don't try to trick an audience with once in a while, again, to be different.
The interesting thing about this approach is that it does not make the special go back directly to that spot when they had a hit on the charts. Uniquely, because they didn't use them in that way, then they are able to exist within it and not feel like a promotion.
We wanted to shoot on the London Bridge, and I went to Scotland Yard, as we do in the United States when we try to get cooperation from the police department. They said, we don't protect anybody on location, not even the Queen of England. I said, my God, that's a pretty big statement, not even the Queen of England. So Fuad and I decided, in spite of all the rejection from Scotland Yard, we were going to go anyhow. And the guys from Scotland Yard said to us, off the record, you go there, we won't bother you, just as long as you don't disrupt the traffic and just as long as you have some kind of control, which we did. And they never bothered us. We got all the scenes.
Royal Luxury Tours are proud to present a phantasmagoria of theatrical divertissement, or An Evening with Me.
I was hooked on Tony Newley. He had just done The Roar of the Grease Paint and The Smell of the Crowd on Broadway, and was an enormous hit. And all of the music from that, the score and everything, I was in love with. So I said, let's try for Tony Newley. Well, Tony Newley was filming Dr. Dolittle at that time. So we said, oh, okay, well, is there any span of time that he's not in a scene? And they said, well, we'll have to see, and we'll have to see. And they finally determined that there were maybe 2 weeks they could release it.
Tony Newley was one of my all-time favorite singers. I always told him that he was born too late. In the era of the Al Jolsons, he would have been a mega superstar. As it was, he teamed up with Leslie Bricusse, and they wrote a couple of great Broadway shows. So when we put the segment together in the theater, it was predetermined, either by our writers or Lucy herself, that she should be in that segment somehow. That was a very clever way to keep her in the movie and also give her an opportunity to play different characters, and a setup to the most important segment in the entire film, which was her pantomime piece.
The pantomime number begins to take on more of a dreamlike quality, and I think it's a very unique and special part of her career.
That was not fake tears that were coming out of her eyes. She was so emotional about the entire experience.
She actually brings us closer into her as a performer, and at the very end breaks the fourth wall, looks directly at the camera and speaks to us in a way that is very moving to me. And at that point, I don't think we see Lucy Carmichael. I think we see Lucille Ball, the artist, speaking to us.
Even when we did the very closing and singing about how touching her experience was and her relationship with this offbeat tour guide who she really bonded with.
So you see, Lucy, London really is filled with magic.
Best time I've had in my whole life.
That was, for me, the real emotional power of what we were trying to say when we attacked doing this different kind of a special for her.
When the Desilu Company came back from London, they felt like they'd accomplished everything that they set out to do.
We thought we had a magnificent production. It came in on time, on budget, and this particular show was truly outstanding as far as I was concerned.
The comedy that's there, the drama, the musical numbers, everything worked as far as what they wanted. And when it went on the air, it got extremely good ratings, but it got such a lukewarm reception, at least by the critics. Lucy was devastated, and she didn't understand it.
She said to me, they have no imagination. If they see me doing one thing as I've done for so many years, if they don't see me doing that, they say, where's Lucy? And she said, they forget my career. I did musicals, I played killers. And she sort of shook her head, and I think that's true.
There was one reviewer in Variety who reviewed, and at the time I was very upset with his review. I've mellowed over the years, and as I reread the review, I said, well, it wasn't so bad after all. But he was saying, when she was in this motorcycle sidecar or when she was in a balcony, why didn't she fall out? Well, we weren't doing the slapstick Lucy in this special.
At the time, I'm sure that people were viewing it strictly within the context of the Lucy Show and the sitcom. And so when they saw this, they saw something that was completely different than that, and they thought that it was a misfire.
The critics, unfortunately, were too critical. I think that the audience and the critics expected Lucy to be I Love Lucy for the rest of her career, which she certainly did not want.
It's an example of an artist who is at a particular point in their career where it's very easy to just continue doing what you're doing, especially one who has a show in the top 10, is considered highly successful and beloved, and yet this person is reaching out and trying to do something beyond that, and isn't just talking about it, but actually doing it.
And I think she decided, why try to beat the public opinion as opposed to having critics complain about something that I think I want to do, but they won't accept it.
She loved to sing and dance. And here she is once again jumping into a musical situation where she can play. You know, and I think it's another side of Lucy that she would have loved to show us more of if the industry would have been a little more welcoming.
And she worked her fanny off, as we all did as well.
We at Desilu were an unusual company because we did things when everybody said it couldn't be done. That's why Lucy wanted to do Lucy in London, because it was something special and different when everybody said, don't do it.
She crossed lines in so many ways in the business, in terms of innovation, in terms of just being willing, I think, to take chances and do things that were different.
She liked it so much, she wanted to do a second one, called Pat and me in, and I said, let's do Lucy of the Desert. You get stranded in Saudi Arabia and a sheik buys you without your knowledge. She loved that. She said, we'll do it in Palm Springs. I have a place there.
And because of the drubbing by most of the critics, she thought, oh my God, if that's what they think of me, well, I better not do anymore. So suddenly all the plans for these other specials all just went into the drawer and was never seen of again.
Over time, I think that her risks pay off later, because all of the things that are within the Lucy Show and I Love Lucy are permanent fixtures within their contexts. And then here we have something that's like a little diamond. It's like a little gem that's by itself and completely unique unto itself and can be enjoyed by itself.
CBS presents this program in color.
Lucy in London.
This stands out as what the meaning of the word depicts. It was special. It was special for Lucy. It was special for all of us.
Starring Lucille Ball.
The special is special, and this special was different. It had music, it had locations, it had culture.
We didn't color inside the box for that, and she was willing and eager to go there.
This is the artist reaching out of the Lucy character and saying, I'm more than this.
It was a departure for her from what she had been doing for so many years.
It was shown once, appreciated or not, but then it wound up in a film vault for 45 years, and fans have been asking, why can't we see that one again?
I would certainly put her as an artist on top of my list of things I'm most proud of, having been able to say I directed Lucille Ball. I remember getting a telephone call from Lucy. She said, I have a vacation coming up of about 30 days, and I haven't figured out whether I want to just relax and have a vacation or work. And I wanted to talk to you about possibly producing and directing a television special.
Cleo, Lucy's cousin sister, said, you know, Lucy's talking about possibly doing something else because she's really wants to expand her horizons and do other things other than the I Love Lucy character.
Lucy got to a point where she gets frustrated occasionally. I want to do something different. I want to do something different. I want to do something. Okay.
Cleo said, I'm thinking about maybe doing some international type of programs with Lucy, like starting off in Paris. In fact, I'm thinking of doing a show in France. And so we decided to go off to Paris to see if we can put together a package in France. But we found one major problem, the language. The French people, particularly in Paris, were not that interested in speaking English. And we decided then and there that as beautiful as France is in Paris, that we can't do a production in France. So we all came home and said to Lucy, we're going to try England. And CBS agreed and gave us a budget of $500,000 to do this Lucy in London special.
I was